I've discovered a new level of dreaming. One I hope no one else has the pleasure of discovering themselves. Before I go on some spill, let me start from the beginning. Fair warning, I can't tell you why it happened, only when it started. My name is Adam. I've always had lucid dreams for as long as I can remember. Whenever I dreamed, I had complete control over anything and everything that happened. If I had ever had a nightmare and I could turn it into a dream where I'm a badass monster hunter, something peaceful or funny, fly around, lift skyscrapers, do whatever else I couldn't do in real life. I always thought I was experiencing the most complex level of dreaming possible. That wasn't until the day my coworker John told me he experienced astral projection as a kid. John isn't someone I consider to be a friend, but he's decent enough. We had a few things in common. We're both in our early 20s, work in the same department, attempting to pay off our student loans. The biggest thing that I couldn't stand about John was how boring he was. Over the past 6 months we'd worked together, I'd had to listen to every mundane detail about his life. I could barely keep myself awake during my 8-hour shift. Listening to one of John's stories could cure anyone of their insomnia. But one day he finally said something that had piqued my interest. Did I ever tell you when I was a kid I used to experience astral projection? He stood in front of my cubicle like he did every morning. I turned away from my computer, curious. Yeah? What was it like? He looked taken back by my sudden interest in something he said. He then responded with, it was like a really lucid dream. I could still see my own body. Now I've heard of astral projection, but I thought it was just some kind of make-believe crap like Santa Claus or people who actually like Nickelback. Still, hearing someone I know say they experienced it intrigued me. Don't get me wrong, I was plenty skeptical, but intrigued nonetheless. What else did you see? I asked gingerly, still uncertain if I believed what he was saying. I just walked around my house. My mother and father were asleep, so all the lights were turned off. I couldn't see much, but just cool to walk around. When did it start? It started when I was around age 5, stopped when I was about 8. Why did it stop? I don't know why. It just did one day. Never told anyone at the time. I thought it was just a normal thing that happened to everyone. Then I thought to ask the most important question. Do you remember how to do it? No, I don't care to either. It was pretty boring after a while. Couldn't interact with anything. All I could do was walk around in the dark. Then he went on one of his boring tirades about his life. After I got home, I looked more into astral projection. Apparently, to do it, you need to relax your body, focus on your breathing, sleep in a dark, quiet area, and try to imagine yourself outside of your body. It seemed easy enough, but the first week I tried ended in failure. Didn't even dream at all, which wasn't unusual, but it did make for a very boring week. Near the end of the week, though, I had a weird nightmare. I woke up in my bed. Darkness, encasing everything around me. Only a small fraction of the moon's light shined through the blinds into my bedroom. In the pitch blackness, I noticed something inside my closet in the back of the room. Tall, shadowy figure stood watching me. Felt like all the air was gone from my body. I couldn't move. I couldn't say anything. Without warning, the figure started floating towards me. My eyes darted to my bedroom door several feet away. Even if I could run, I'd never make it. The dark figure floated past the window, its arms moving about in a distorted manner. Only a couple of feet away now. I remained in my bed, helpless and unable to move for what felt like an eternity. Then the sound of my oven door slamming open woke me up. The house I'm renting is very cheap. The oven door is flimsy, never close all the way, so hearing it open by itself from time to time wasn't unusual. At the beginning of the following week, I was hesitant to try again because of how much the dream scared me, but I forced myself to try it again. It worked. Not much happened, though. It was just like John had said. I was awake outside of my body, but could still see myself sleeping. It didn't last very long, as I woke up about 15 seconds later. I didn't even get to leave my room. Still in my mind, it was one step closer to my goal. The next night wasn't very different from the last one. I woke up in my room. I tried to open my bedroom door, but I woke up before I could. The following night proved better, though. I was able to exit my room, and upon doing so, I noticed something odd. Unlike John's experience and other astral projection stories that I've read online, I was able to interact with everything around me. It was as if I was still awake. But of course, I wasn't. I knew that because I could still see my unconscious body sleeping. The first thing I did was attempt to turn on the TV. To my surprise, it turned on. Some news channel was broadcasting. I picked up the remote, I started switching to the channels. I saw a rerun of Rick and Morty was on, so I watched some of it. It was the Dream Inception episode. Ironic, I know. The sound of my alarm clock caught my attention. It was coming from my room. I followed it all the way to my bedroom door. I grabbed the doorknob, slowly turned it, getting it to open just a crack. The sound of my oven door slamming open jolted me awake. I sprang up in bed. Sweat pouring down my face. The time on my alarm clock read 6:05 a.m. It was time for work. I checked my oven door, and indeed, it was open. I shut the door, brushed it off, and drove to work. When I got to work, I told John about my experiences. He gave me a disinterested, "Oh, that's cool." I was a bit confused by this. Didn't you hear me? I actually astral projected. It was just like you said. That's cool and all, man, but I don't expect anything interesting to happen. What do you mean? What I mean is that I astral projected for like 3 years. Only interesting thing I saw was a lighthouse outside my childhood home. With that, I cut our conversation short before he could go on his usual boring tirade. From that day on, I became valiant in proving John wrong. I set out to do something interesting. I waited until my day off and made sure to turn my alarm off so that it wouldn't disturb me. Then I turned off all the lights in my house to avoid any interference. These preparations worked like a charm. I astral projected again. First, I explored all of my house, then tried and failed to eat something. Everything I ate or drank just passed right through me. I also attempted to browse the internet, but found that some of the keys I pressed wouldn't register. Plus, the lack of light also made it very hard to see the keyboard. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't travel any further than my house. Trying to open the front door didn't work. It was like the door itself was nailed to the frame. The only thing I could do was walk around and watch TV, all while my physical body slept through the night. So that's exactly what I did for a whole week. And it was awesome, to say the least. It was like being awake. I could use my free time to do whatever I wanted. When I was awake, I felt fully rested and able to work through the day without dozing off, and even despite John's stories. It was a pretty sweet deal, to say the least. That was until one night. During another day off from work, I was doing the usual routine of astral projecting while watching TV. A sudden knock at the door nearly gave me a heart attack. I looked out the window and saw it was still nighttime, or so I thought. I called out to whoever knocked, but received no response. I checked the peephole. I saw it was my elderly next-door neighbor, Shelley. Seeing this as my chance to push this astral projection thing to the next level, I decided to open the door. I unlatched the deadbolt, unlocked the handlock, and twisted the door handle, holding my breath. The door opened. A gust of wind passed through me. I jerked up, panting, my face only damp with sweat. This surprised me, as I usually woke up drenched in it. I heard Shelley calling my name from outside. I rushed up and ran to the door. She jumped a little, startled. "Sorry if I woke you. Your door was unlocked." "I know," I nervously responded. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay." "Of course I am. Why wouldn't I be?" Her eyes were full of concern. "Well, I heard screaming last night." "Screaming? Oh, you might have heard my TV." "Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure you're okay. Have a good morning, then." "Okay, thanks for stopping by." I waved her off and closed the door. Then I noted a few things. One, it was now morning, but I could swear it was still dark out before I woke up. Second, I didn't hear anyone screaming last night. And lastly, I actually almost left my house. In my mind, it was progress. One step is closer to my goal of experiencing a full day outside while in my astral projection form. The next night I was doing the same routine when coincidentally the Dream Inception episode of Rick and Morty came on again. I let the episode play. Over the sound of the TV, I could hear something in the background. It was faint, but I distinctly remember it sounded like my bedroom door was creaking. I decided to see what was making that noise. I approached my bedroom and slowly pushed the door open. Instantly, I froze in place. By the window stood a large, menacing shadow creature. He was hunched over in front of the window. I looked over to the left of it and saw my unconscious body lying in bed, frightened. I carefully backed away and moved into the hallway, attempting to make my way back to the living room. I heard whatever it was standing up and walk out of the room. Panicked, I started walking faster and faster away from the door. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I needed to get away from whatever that thing was. I heard its footsteps growing louder and louder behind me. I made it to the entrance to the kitchen before slam! The sound of my oven door slamming open. My eyes flew open. Once again, I was covered in sweat. I did the usual routine of getting up and going to work. I neglected to tell John about my experience, as I was sure that he wouldn't think anything of it. Though I was terrified at that moment, I still had a burning sensation to try it again. It was one bad experience out of plenty of good ones. Besides that strange occurrence, there was something else in my mind, the interaction I had with my neighbor Shelley. I was a door away from interacting with another person while my physical self was asleep. So because of that, I obviously wanted to try again. I thought maybe next time I should just try leaving my door unlocked. So I waited until my next day off. This time I made sure to tie a red string around the oven door so it wouldn't wake me like all the other times before. When I went to sleep, it was the evening of April 14th. Remember that date. It'll be important later. I did the same routine of preparation and went to sleep. I opened my eyes and quickly realized from the clothes hanging above, I was in my closet. This was unusual as I would normally appear next to my bed. I stepped out of my closet. I noticed the bedroom was much darker than usual also. The door was cracked open slightly, but nothing strange about that. What was strange, though, was that my blinds were slightly open. My window allows me to see a clearer view of the street, so I hunched over and I peered through it. I saw someone, out in the front of my yard. It was the same shadow creature from before, but now it had taken on more of a human form. I still couldn't make out any distinguishing features. Whoever it was looking around frantically, like it was searching for something. All the while, what I could only assume was that its jaw kept unhinging back and forth. Once again, I found myself frozen in fear. All I could do was stand there and stare at this thing, whatever it was. Then the creature jerked its head towards the window. It saw me. Like some primal animal, it bolted up, started running towards the direction of my front door. My worries subsided when I remembered that I didn't unlock the front door like I was supposed to. Still, I wasn't about to wait for this thing to break through the door. Then I remembered what familiar sound always woke me up. I spun around and I saw my bedroom door wide open. I heard footsteps fading down the hallway. I stepped into the hallway and saw a shadow creature, darker than the one outside. It was fast approaching the kitchen. I saw my front door flung wide open. Whatever was outside was now inside my house. The shadow creature in front of me dashed into the kitchen. I knew what I had to do. I raced to the kitchen, and before I had the chance to enter, there was a loud slam. Everything turned black. I slowly opened my eyes, but instead of waking in my bed like I always do, I was still in my astral projection body. I walked to my bedroom and I saw my bed was now empty. I was in panic mode. Desperately, I checked various rooms of my house, all of which were empty. I walked back to the living room and saw the TV was still on, playing that same goddamn episode. Sitting down in the chair in front of it was the darkest shadow creature that I'd seen so far. The creature was so drawn to the TV, it didn't even notice me. The sound of the bathroom door opening drew my attention away. What walked out left me in a state of emotions I could only describe as confused and afraid. It was me. But not me. It was my physical self. I watched as it finished getting dressed for work and walked right through me to the door without even noticing me. It opened the door and it stepped outside. Before I could close the door, I ran through it to the outside, and as soon as I did, I immediately regretted my decision. Once outside, I looked up and down my street. Both ends of the street were encased in complete darkness. Stepping onto the sidewalk, I was able to get a better look at the houses around me. They were the same as the ones of my awake state. I tried to get back to my house, but the door was locked. I banged on all the neighbors' doors to no avail. I even tried screaming for help. I screamed as loud as I could, as long as I could. Then I dropped to my knees in desperation. It felt like hours, hell, even days had passed before I started to notice a mysterious object in the distance. It was nearly invisible at first, hidden by a forest of trees. Then it came into view and behind some buildings. A house. But one I had never seen before. I looked around in confusion. I noticed something even stranger. A lighthouse. In the distance. Which was impossible as I didn't live anywhere near the sea. I took another step around and saw a little boy sitting on the ground. His eyelids drooped, and even from here I could see the bags underneath them. He stared in the direction of the lighthouse as if he was hypnotized by it. At that point, I knew if I didn't find a way out of here, I'd end up like him. And with that in mind, I turned back to my house and saw someone looking from my bedroom window. It's now or never, I thought. I ran to the door. Of course, it was still locked. I slammed my body into it several times. It wasn't budging. I stopped to catch my breath. My shoulders were writhing in agony from me hitting the door so many times. The door began to creak open on its own as if it was inviting me in. Who the hell was I to pass up that offer? I entered the house and I saw the TV was still on. It was playing that same godforsaken episode of Rick and Morty. And upon entering the kitchen, I saw the red string was still tied to the oven door. I grabbed the door and pulled on it. I heard some movement in the hallway, so I increased my momentum. Hurried footsteps growing closer and closer to the kitchen. I gave a final tug to the knot. The footsteps halted in the doorway in front of me. At that moment, it felt as though time had slowed down. I looked up to see the shadow creature standing in the kitchen doorway. Left of him, out of the open front door, I saw a little boy's face. He was smiling, then he vanished, as everything around me did too, followed by a flash of white light. My eyes shot open. I was back in my bed. I did a quick look around to make sure that I was actually awake this time. Sunlight pours into my room, giving me a bright glow to everything, and made it seem almost dreamlike. Birds chirping gave me reassurance. The time on my alarm read 7:55 a.m. I was up in time to go to work. After a quick shower, I threw on my clothes, grabbing my phone, and got in my car. As I checked my phone, I noticed the date. April 16th. This was impossible because I was sure it should have been April 15th. When I asked John about it, he said on that date, April 15th, which was apparently yesterday, I came into work the same as always. I told him about my experience, and he was convinced it was all some lucid dream, but it felt all too real. I don't know what to make of anything that happened. I do know one thing, though, and it should come as no surprise to hear. I think I'm done with astral projection. For good.